All right. Well, we have broker Kyle Fouts. He handed me a piece of paper here.
I know.
What font size do you use?
Which I know you like. I heard you sigh when I handed it to you.
No, because I can't read that.
That's size 12, buddy. That's size
not
12. You know what?
12.
100% that's 12. But you don't have to read, Mike. You can pass.
It's good because I can't read
Yeah,
anyway. It
I'm
wouldn't
aware.
matter what the font size is. I can't spell or read anyways.
All right, Kyle. Here we go.
All right, so let's talk about form changes as of February 1st. They keep changing the forms.
They do, and it's
Leave me alone, please.
it's not me.
I know.
You're
I'm not.
talking to the right-
That was rhetorical.
Okay.
That was to the committee.
A rhetorical comment. Okay,
Yes.
I got it. To the committee, to the powers that be. I think a lot of us have those same sentiments. I'll tell you that. But the good thing is these changes were very minimal. The big thing I want to get out there is please make sure that you update your templates on Transaction Desk. All of the files that come in with old contract versions get sent to me for a quick conversation, a quick email to the agent that just says, hey, FYI. So the fewer that we could have of those, the better, at least in my inbox. So that's kind of the culprit on this. But essentially the changes to the contracts, the only things that were changed were the purchase contracts, so the residential, the land, the lease agreement, et cetera. And it just made it more clear that instead of just saying the buyer or the broker on behalf of the buyer, it now says specifically broker represents buyer and will receive compensation from the transaction.
Boom.
Right. ADR. I mean, there was language in the previous versions of the contract that stated basically this, but it maybe wasn't it wasn't a one sentence thing. It was in a paragraph. ADRE opined that was not sufficient to have the parties be absolutely understanding of that dynamic. So now it is right above where they sign their names, essentially. So that's really the only change. The second thing is the small claims court threshold has been increased from $3,500 up to $5,000.
Who makes that decision?
That's an excellent question. I don't know the answer to.
Okay.
Yeah,
Probably the Attorney General.
likely. Yeah. I would agree with that. But I don't know where it comes from. It
just
happened.
happened.
It happened. It is part of the purchase contract, and therefore, like if you look at a red line version, it's a very short version because it just has this sentence change and then the dollar amount change.
All right.
So nothing crazy.
So let me ask you this. I think it was a couple months ago. Maybe explain a little bit more in detail the delayed listing language, and I think there's like a delayed listing agreement. What that is, and when do we use it?
Yeah, there is plenty of confusion. That's a new process. We've kind of, as you alluded to, we have a lot of new processes. The delayed listing form is new, and the process is new. We used to give agents language that they could put onto page 7 of the listing agreement that would say property's not going into MLS, yada yada yada, will not be marketed. Now, instead of that language, there is a form that has been created by ADRE or by AAR. That covers that scenario. So the listing agreement changed. Line 172 has now an election for the owner to make, whether it says does or does not. Essentially, the owner does. If the owner does, essentially the listing is going onto the market immediately. It's going into MLS immediately. There is no delay in marketing.
Right.
If the owner does not, which is fairly commonly the case, I'll take a listing, but I still got pictures to take, or they're going to do whatever to the property, so it's going to be a week. It's going to be a little bit of time. Now triggers the use of this new form. The new form is a mouthful. Most people will probably refer to it as just the owner's delayed marketing form, but it's the full term is the owner's delayed or limited marketing election addendum. It's a hefty one. But essentially there's only 2 elections on there, either delayed marketing or limited marketing. Okay. When you see delayed marketing, which is the first one, that's on line 17, when you see that term, think for the members of ARMLS, think coming soon. That is exactly what that section means. I know they're like, well, I am delaying marketing, but I'm not going to go coming soon. That's the other one. So delayed marketing on that form means coming soon. Okay. Like you're putting it on MLS, but it's just not being syndicated. The lower one, line 21 of that document says limited marketing. And that's basically a catch-all. I mean, it does say that it can be an office exclusive, so you can still have conversations with other West USA agents, if that's the brokerage you're with listening to us, regarding the listing, but it won't be put out to anybody. It won't be marketed in any capacity. There won't be a sign. There won't be flyers. That's limited marketing. that's the change. I mean, it's the form is fairly straightforward. It's check a box, have the owner sign, but essentially it is further proof. In our business, there's just some the documentation is CYA for obvious reasons. This is further proof that the owner understood the dynamic of the marketing that they were having for their property. You know what I mean?
Yeah, and I oftentimes I'm in a situation where, because my belief is if I'm sitting in a kitchen and they're ready to sign a listing agreement, but we know that this house will not be ready to go on the market for 4 months because they need to replace carpet and so forth. I like, if you're willing to sign, I want to walk away with that.
So you wouldn't just wait. You wouldn't wait for the 4 months for them to get their ducks
not to
in
sign
a
the
row.
listing agreement. No way.
And why is that?
Control the contract.
Okay.
Yep.
Agreed.
Okay.
I was just for the sake of conversation. That is
a lot of bad things can happen in 4 months.
Well, yeah. I mean, and they change their mind, right? They decide to go with their other buddy or their cousin or someone else who's now newly licensed or what have you, which is fine. But you're right. If you have someone in front of you who is ready to sign an agreement, you sign the agreement. When is the start date for that agreement? When you put together the ER for that listing, do you start it? Do you not post date, pre-date,
commencement date?
Yeah.
Yeah, well,
we
have a commencement date, the day that they sign it, but then we have in the additional terms that whatever said period of time doesn't begin till it actually gets into the MLS.
Okay, so it's in the scenario that you've described that you wouldn't need those terms. You now have the owner's delayed form to utilize. Yeah. And so you would utilize the limited marketing because you're basically not doing anything for those months. You're just holding it.
Yeah, till it's ready.
I'll say just another piece on that, Mike. I know you're moving on, but agents, when they go to enter the listing into MLS, want to know what date do I put? It asks for a listing date or a list date. Put the date that you're entering it into MLS. So you're not accruing days on market for those 4 months that they're rehabbing whatever or doing whatever. When I'm entering it in MLS, ask me for a list date, I'm going to put the day I'm putting it in there.
Gotcha.
Okay. That's a way to, that's part of the process that maybe isn't perfect, but it is the way that it's handled.
All right, let's talk about difficult clients and how to handle them. We all have difficult clients. I'm sure you guys have difficult agents that you work with. Me, not included.
I'm not talking about West USA agents, of course.
I know.
Yeah, I wanted to bring. I mean, obviously, sitting in the chair that we sit in as brokers, we get a lot of these types of scenarios, and there's just some overarching themes that I wanted to touch on when you're dealing with somebody who is putting you through your paces, right? Yeah, and
they're coming in hot,
right? To each their own. I tell agents, this is a people business, and it takes all kinds, and you'll see all kinds if you're in the business long enough, and that's okay. It just is what it is. But if you have a client who's being argumentative or difficult, remember that you work for them, right? If that's the first, you have fiduciaries to them. You're working on their behalf. You're giving them your advice, and whether or not they take it is their decision, right? And so just make sure that you're understanding of that dynamic. It shouldn't be you pushing them to do anything. It's just, here is what I would advise in this scenario. Take that for what you will, and if you choose to go a different direction, that's okay. This is why we document our conversations, to make sure that we can prove what advice was given, and then they're adults. They can make a choice on how to act on that advice or not to. Some people think this business is incredibly easy and they don't really need our advice, yet they've hired us. It's interesting. It's an interesting dynamic. It's also difficult, I know, and I've had 2 scenarios over the last few months with agents, clients who have essentially fired our agent, but we're in the middle of a transaction. So I've kind of stepped in to try to be like a middle person. And usually when that happens, the client's just happy to be rid of the agent for whatever reason that they think that they're being, the shortcomings of that agent. So a broker gets involved, it's fine. In these scenarios, it wasn't. I was just an extension of the agent, and I was as bad as that agent in their mind. So I've had to practice what I preach, which I haven't been put through my paces in that regard in a long, long time. And I do now very much see how difficult it is when a client is incredibly accusatory and everything you say is met with skepticism and just you're trying to further your own interests versus advise me. That's a tough situation to be in. and now I can really appreciate that. Your natural inclination is to defend yourself, right? We have our client's best interest in mind at all points. That is our job. That is our business. And so when it's being met with those types of comments back and framing it in a way that is, accusatory, it's difficult.
Yeah,
it's difficult.
Well, let's talk about it when a client wants to fire you. It's an interesting to have a client want to fire you, like during a transaction.
Sure.
Because if it's prior to a transaction and they want to fire you, it's got to be a mutual.
Correct.
It's got to be mutually agreed upon. If you as the agent just want to flat out fire them, you can just fire them. It's unilaterally. You don't have to have
with a listing scenario. Correct.
But when you're in the middle of a transaction, that's really interesting.
We still have obligations as agents, whether the client likes it or not.
But let's say the agent wants out.
I'll have a conversation with them. I understand, but the agent needs to understand. Once you've started down that road, you can't just take the hat off and be like,
okay, that's what I was getting at.
I'm done. It doesn't work that way, unfortunately. You hope that cooler heads will prevail. But if they don't, our verbal conversations are not, going as planned. Let's move to email communication and we'll just communicate.
That's probably better. That's probably better. If they become accusatory,
sure.
You probably want to have as much of that communication via emails or text as possible.
Yeah, documented, I agree. The problem with email is there's no tone, and it can even exacerbate the issue.
You're not wrong, and I agree with that. And an agent has to be really careful with how they communicate, because it's just a bad look. Like I said, your natural inclination is to defend yourself. You're the professional in this scenario. Whether your client is just coming at you at all points, you have to remain cool, calm, collected. Make sure all of your communication is incredibly professional, because it will, like to Todd's point, that stuff will come back. There's no context to it. I agree with that, and they'll also use it against you in a heartbeat. So you got to be very, handling them with kitty gloves to some degree. Just like I'm just stating the facts. There is no opinions here. I'm just giving you my advice. Again, take it for what it's worth. You know what I mean?
Sometimes, Kyle, what do you think about the position taking the position with the consumer of, let's slow down a minute. Let's sit down and let's have a conversation. What are the things, and kind of like Mike in the very beginning when we're talking to that buyer and we want them to engage with us, what are the things that are going on that's really a problem for you? And how can I help us get through that particular, get over this?
If you
rather
anything.
than saying I didn't do that, or
correct, and you can't take that tack, because that's just going to increase the level of problematic conversations. But yeah, anything that you can do, any conversations that you can have to try to kind of take the steam out of the situation, I get it. But I've also realized that some people just they're not here for it. They're
not nice people.
They just don't care. They're not reasonable with their expectations. They're not rational in their communication. And so it's just, you're like, where do we go from here? If I can't even just have okay, let's take a step back. Let's try to take the emotion out of this. Let's have a real adult to adult conversation. And they're not gonna hear it. It's tough.
At what point do we pick up the phone and give you guys a heads up? Just say, hey, I've got a problematic client here. You might be getting a call.
As soon as you feel like we'll take that conversation with you at any point. Whenever you feel like you need to have it, we're here for it. We'll listen and we'll give you some advice if there's things that maybe we would suggest. But, oftentimes it's just a heads up we get from an agent, which is great. It's appreciated, especially if the client has threatened to call us. Let us know. You can say, I talked to Kyle, so ask for Kyle.
I give him Nick's number.
Perfect. Well, and as you should.
Not a broker.
Non-broker Nick.
But you're my coach.
That's right.
I'm your mentor, buddy.
All righty. And the last thing I would just say to that, especially when situations go bad, to your point of don't take it personal, don't let your emotions get in the way. You need to step back and go, how did we get here? Like,
Sure.
I do that all the time. Of like,
Sure.
how did we get here?
Self-reflect.
What did I do? Could I have done something different? And then I'm like, no, probably not. I'm perfect. So, you know, it's always the other person's fault in my book, right?
You know, there's a humbling that takes place when you do that in front of somebody, especially your consumer. You have to be careful, because sometimes any kind of admission can be used.
No, I'm
against
talking
you.
about self-reflection.
But no, right. But the point is, if you sit down and you say, "How can we resolve this?" You know, what's the issue? You know, what did I do? You know, or something along those lines. Sometimes you can get past them. But to your point, Mike, sometimes people, and my wife's had those as well, and I did many years ago. You're just not going to win no matter what you do. And that, I think, is the person Kyle's referencing right now. Yeah.
And that's tough. And so you don't use like, well, I'm sorry I did that. Or you don't put, you don't, like you said, you don't want to like say, because a lot of times they're just skewing the conversation for a way to make it bad on you. What I would say is, I'm sorry you feel that way. Okay, what are we going to do to move forward? Like, let's focus on solutions here. What do you want to, where do you want to go from here? And then quickly, I want to touch on when it's a cross sale agent.
Oh, quickly? Are you kidding me? I got a lot on.
Okay,
let's
where do
talk
you wanna
about
go?
that.
That's fine.
Oh man, like what can we do? Because okay. One, it's this happens more frequently than you would think. Is you're dealing with an agent from another brokerage, and they are okay. I'm not a broker. I don't know everything. But I feel like I've been doing this podcast for 12 plus years with all you guys that are all brokers. I know stuff. I know stuff that a lot of agents don't know. And I would just be sitting there going, like, you're wrong. Right. And then I find out that agent is the broker.
Correct.
And I'm like, what do you do?
Well, see, for someone like you have so much experience to draw from that you know that they're wrong. So I don't worry about how you handle that because you'll handle it as a professional. I worry about the new agent because I get this all the time. Well, hey, the person on the other side is a broker. And they're saying this, they must, they're a broker. They must be right. Like that's this, which I appreciate, being a broker. I appreciate that level of trust in what a broker knows. But just like agents, there are plenty of great brokers. There are plenty that don't know what they don't know. And when it's a sole proprietor and they're their own broker, again, there's plenty of great ones. I'm not saying that they're throwing a blanket and saying they all are like this, but there are plenty who have their own theories on things and just do it their own way. And there's nobody there to check them. They're just kind of doing their own stuff.
I've said this Mike's probably heard me for 35 years say this, but it's just one of those things. The first time somebody says, well, you're wrong, I've been doing this for 22 years, that's your first clue. They have no clue what they're talking about. Because things change, laws change, rules change, the way we do things change. Some of us have just been through that in the last couple of years. But just remember that, so Mike's question is, how would you, if you're smart, meaning if you know the business, then you know the rule they're breaking. And and that's why all my CE classes give you the actual law itself. And what I don't want you to become attorneys. I just want you to be able to say to somebody, you know what, you might want to take a look at R428-1101. There's only about 6 different laws that you could really send across the table to somebody. And then just tell them, hey, you know what, you might want to read this and let's have a conversation after you do.
Sure. Yeah,
but that doesn't mean they're going to take that as advice either. So.
And then if they're not a broker, let's just say they're not a broker. So my process is that would be the first thing is here's the language, and do it in a professional way. You can't get into a yelling match because it's a
non-starter.
It's a non-starter, and this is my interpretation of what this language says and why, and if that doesn't suffice, then I encourage them. And I've had this happen. I go talk to your broker, and then they'll call me and go, "You're right."
Yep.
And then if that doesn't work, then I'm introducing their broker to you guys, and just let you guys handle it. Because they're not going to listen to me.
Correct,
but the other brokers.
I hear you. No. I hear you, and you're right. When the agent goes to the broker and still gets poor advice, and then comes back to you, I don't mind you saying, "Hey, can you have a conversation?" What you need to understand, or an agent that's in your situation, is that I may not be able to sway that broker either. I mean, they believe they know what they know, and may not be willing to bend on that. And in that case, you just have to, the client just has to make a decision to act however they would choose.
Okay,
based on your advice. You may not be able to convince the other side. You know what I mean?
Be a help. Don't be,
Yeah.
like you said earlier with the consumer, look for the solution. You're looking for the solution. So you're telling the other agent, hey, I'd like you to review this because I'd like to have a solution beyond this before we, and you don't tell them before we bring in the guns, but that's really what you're hoping. You're hoping to have some kind of collaborative, conversation.
So I think the other popular scenario is the listing agent he goes out of town.
Sure.
And he hasn't let anyone know.
Sure.
He's got no one covering for them, or he thinks he does, and that person's really not covering for them. And I can't get a hold of the agent, whether it's I've submitted an offer and I'm not hearing back. I've left 10 messages a day. We've got some questions. We want to submit an offer.
Right.
At what point can I, if I can, I know I can't go directly to the seller because
Correct.
We are so tempted to do that I can't tell you how many times I want to go to the seller, but I know we can't. But at what point can I pick up the phone and call? Because, that's a non-starter too. That agent's going to be mad. But at the end of the day, I represent my buyer, and I need to. And so, at what point can I pick up the phone and call that other designated broker?
That's, to me, I hear you, and you're right. That does create potentially a dynamic of like, what you told on me. I'm not too concerned with that from our perspective. In my mind, I mean, the answer will change depending on where you're at in the process. Potentially, like sometimes you have a little bit more leeway to wait or have an ability to wait versus if there's a deadline looming and you need to get, like, I would absolutely reach, and the broker should be here there to receive that and say, I'll do my best to get in touch with them. That's what we're here for, to help.
That's that old rule, Mike, where people think if the listing agent isn't available for 24 hours, I can go directly to the seller.
That's negative. Yeah.
You can't. And one more thing, that's R4 281102, and that was just also updated on December 13th of 25 to much more clear language to say that if somebody goes away on vacation and they don't tell their broker, they don't have somebody else prepared to do that, and that person, that's an administrative code violation. So it's a law that they're breaking. It's not, just, oh, you should have done this. It's, but to your point about calling the broker, I've never recommended that an agent calls another company's designated broker. I always recommend, because first of all, they're more trained and they know better than to answer the phone to somebody sometimes like that. They may have somebody else do it. But I always recommend go to your broker, go to one of your managing brokers, and then have them call for you. It carries a lot more weight, and I think that's the right thing to do.
I'm ambivalent about, if that's even the right word, but I'm okay either way. If they get it. So what I'll usually tell an agent is go ahead and give their broker, because we receive calls like that from agents, and I'll listen to an agent and I'll have the conversation with our agent. But there are brokerages that will say, nope, you got to have your broker call. And if that's the case, let me know. I'm happy to do that. I mean, any of us are, for sure.
Good point.
All right, you had on your list you want to talk about septic systems.
I had literally 3 conversations about it last week, and so I mean, it's clearly happening out there. You don't want to talk about septic systems?
I love talking
your
about
favorite topic.
Yeah,
is that what you mean?
Yeah, let's do it.
All right, Mike. What form do you need?
Yeah.
Don't quiz me. This is your special day.
No, my special day.
On-site wastewater? No.
On-site treatment, something. I know where it is.
You know that it starts with on-site, and you can find it. Okay. The on-site wastewater treatment facility addendum is needed. That's what.
That's when not you the have business down the street.
It's not. No. Hey, also, can you, like, if the parties agree, can you waive that requirement that's in there for it to be inspected and pumped and all the things? Like,
if it's a cash deal, you can.
No.
Can you?
No.
Okay.
Cash deal? Sure.
Why?
Because normally it's a lender requirement.
It's covered by the Arizona Department of Health Services.
It's a statutory.
This is why I didn't want to talk
this
subject. Okay.
Hey, listen, and this is why I brought it up. We see it all the time. That the clients don't want to, like, the buyer's going to abandon it, or the buyer doesn't care, or what have you. It is a statutory, like, you must. If it is serviced by a septic system, it must be inspected and pumped, unless it's a brand new system, in which case we'll accept the discharge authorization, which basically is the county saying we're good on this system and it's brand new, hasn't been put into use yet. So just note the on-site wastewater treatment facility addendum is the form that governs kind of this whole dynamic between the parties. It needs to be, it says it defaults to the seller having it inspected and pumped within 20 days of contract acceptance. Okay. They also must provide the documentation to you, any documents they have in regard to the septic system, also within 20 days. Buyer has the right to evaluate the septic documents and cancel. This is not tied to the inspection period. This is one of the questions that I had this week. This is almost invariably going to be done after your inspection period is completed. You're through your Binzer process. You still have a window of opportunity to walk if there are issues. The document also says that, it talks about a 1% of the sales price that the seller is obligated to pay in the event the system is non-functional. Agents often confuse, the report comes in with either one of three things, either functional, functional with concerns, or non-functional. Those are the three options that the inspector has to choose. Very commonly, you'll see functional with concerns. And a lot of agents believe that that triggers the need for, or the required 1% from the seller, and it doesn't. Okay. At that point, if it comes in functional with concerns, usually what happens is we have concerns. Buyer, this is it. Then now we're in the buyer 5-day window to evaluate the documentation. Where are we going to go from here, seller? Are we going to do some sort of concession? Are you going to fix it? Like, the negotiations begin at that point, but it does not trigger the required 1%. The only thing that triggers that, where the seller actually must pay, is not functional.
So it again, I'm not sure if it's contract doc or that doc, or the on-site wastewater, but there was a clause, and I thought it was still in there, so that says that the pump, if it has been inspected within the past 6 months, then you can use that inspection report. But here's the concern. Both the listing agent and the buyer's agent need to look at the date on that document. And if the closing is going to take place 1 hour after, 1 day after, a week after, you're going to have it done all over again anyway. So you might want to front load that and have them re-inspect it within that 20-day period. That's
still there. Absolutely. It does. So you do have they're good for 6 months, but it goes by, like you said, close of escrow date. Yeah. It's not, we went under contract within 6 months, but we're closing, 30 days after that. It's close of escrow must occur within that 6-month window. And if it does, you can utilize that previous inspection. It doesn't have to be redone at that point. So,
all right. So 2 questions. Sure. So if the sewer system or the septic system comes back non-functional, and we're talking about that, the 1% kicks in, just want to clear, doesn't mean that the buyer can't walk.
Correct. The buyer has the ability
to walk. And then number 2, and this is the one I hear agents like. There's not agents go back and forth on that.
Sure.
Because I believe the language says that the seller is required at their expense to get the inspection. Can the buyer pay for it? Can that be negotiated?
It can.
Okay.
The payment of the inspection can. I'll tell you, it's between $500 and $1,000. Like around $750 is what I've heard, but it's been a while since someone told me.
But we saw this not right now, but we saw this like up in the White Mountains when the market was hot. It was, everything was being negotiated.
Sure.
The things that buyers agreed to do.
Right. Agreed. What can't be negotiated is the fact that it needs to be done.
Okay.
But as far as the payment for it, yes, it does default to the seller. It can be negotiated.
You make septic systems exciting, Kyle.
Aren't they?
You are amazing.
You only get out what you put into it.
Well played. Is that more dating advice for Todd? Nope. All right, Kyle, I appreciate it. Really good stuff. Leave you with the quote of the day. It's hard to beat a person who never gives up. Babe Ruth. Yeah. Appreciate everybody joining us. Go out and sell a home.